shadow fell over us. Not from a cloud, but from a man. A hulking figure emerging from the tree line, his head concealed by a black, medieval-style executioner's hood. In that one heart-stopping moment, the world went silent, and a single primal thought screamed through my mind. We were being hunted. It had started as a perfect day. September 27th, 1969. My girlfriend Cecilia and I were just two college kids trying to escape our studies at a secluded spot at Lake Berryessa. We spread our blanket on a grassy slope, talking about our future, oblivious. You learn how to push the memories away, but they never really leave. They just wait. They linger in the quiet moments, in the way the sun sets over the water, in the rustle of leaves that sounds too much like footsteps. Most days, it's a dull echo, a thing that happened a lifetime ago. But sometimes, it's as real as it was that afternoon. Sometimes, I'm right back on that blanket, under a perfect blue sky, seconds before my world was ripped apart. It started with a feeling, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, the kind of primordial prickle on the back of your neck that tells you something is deeply wrong. Cecilia, ever perceptive, sat up slightly. "Look," she whispered, her voice tight. "There's a man over there." About 200 or 300 yards away, a heavy-set man was standing near the trees. Just standing. He wasn't hiking or fishing. He was staring directly at us. There was an unnerving stillness to him that made my stomach clench. We'd heard vague reports on the news about a killer in the Bay Area, a boogeyman who called himself the Zodiac. But that was a problem for other people, in other cities. It felt as distant and unreal as a movie. I tried to crack a joke to put her, and myself, at ease. But the feeling of being a specimen under a microscope wouldn't go away. Then, he disappeared behind a tree. For a brief, blissful second, a wave of relief washed over me. I was just being paranoid. He's just another hiker. I was wrong. He stepped out again, and we saw the mask. It was a crude, black, executioner-style hood that covered his entire head and shoulders, with a bib-like piece hanging down his chest. Sewn onto the front was a white circle with a cross drawn through it, like a gun sight. He had clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes, obscuring whatever was behind them, and now he was holding a gun. He started walking towards us. It wasn't a rush. It was a slow, deliberate walk. Every single step hammered home just how real, how final this was. "Oh my God, he's got a gun," Cecilia said, her voice trembling. We were frozen, trapped on our little idyllic patch of grass with nowhere to run. If these real-life nightmares keep you up at night, subscribe for more stories that get under your skin. Now, back to the nightmare at Lake Berryessa. When he finally spoke, his voice was a shockingly calm, flat monotone, muffled by the thick fabric of the hood. "I'm an escaped convict," he said. He claimed he'd escaped from a prison in Montana, that he'd killed a guard, and now he needed our car and money to get to Mexico. My mind was racing, desperately trying to latch onto a survivable scenario. A robbery. Okay. I can handle a robbery. That was a script I understood. I immediately offered him my wallet and the keys to my Carmen Ghia, holding them out, trying to be as cooperative as possible to show him we weren't a threat. But he didn't take them. A cold dread seeped into my bones. This wasn't following the script. "I'm going to have to tie you up," he said, his voice still unnervingly flat. He pulled out several pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline. He'd planned this, This was all part of his script, not mine. He ordered Cecilia to tie me up, his voice steady as he corrected her when the knots weren't tight enough. His hands were shaking, though, a strange tremor of nervousness that seemed completely at odds with his calm voice. After he tied her, we were utterly helpless, lying face down on our picnic blanket. This wasn't a robbery. I knew it. In a last, desperate attempt to find a crack in his reality, to prove this was all some kind of sick joke, I asked him if the gun was even loaded. He calmly ejected the clip, showed me the gleaming brass of the bullets inside, and slid it back into the gun with a sickeningly final click. Any shred of hope I was clinging to simply vanished. There was a long, terrible silence. The world seemed to hold its breath. The only sound was the frantic pounding of my own heart against the grass. The man just stood over us, a silent, hooded specter against the bright blue sky. And then he said the 5 words that will echo in my mind until the day I die. I'm going to have to stab you people. This was never a robbery. He was a murderer. He pulled out a long knife with a wooden handle, its blade at least a foot long and gleaming in the afternoon sun. All I could do was beg. My voice was hoarse, pathetic. Just take our money. We won't tell anyone, please. He didn't answer. He knelt beside me. I felt a searing, unbelievable pain as he drove the knife into my back. Once. Twice. The pain was a blinding, white-hot agony that erased all thought. He stabbed me again and again, 6 times in total. Then he turned to Cecilia. I could hear her screaming, a sound of pure terror and agony that will be burned into my memory for the rest of my life. He was relentless, stabbing her 10 times as she writhed in pain, trying to roll away from the blade. My world was reduced to pain and the sound of her screams. Thinking it was my only chance, I forced my body to go limp, held my breath, and played dead, praying he would think he'd finished. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it was over. I risked a glance. He calmly wiped his knife, looked down at us one last time, and then just turned and walked away with the same deliberate pace he'd used to approach us. He walked back to my car. With a black marker, he drew his strange cross-circle symbol on the door and left a message for the world, a scorecard of his reign of terror. Vallejo 12-2068, 7-4-69, September 27-69, 6:30 by knife. While we lay bleeding out on the grass, he drove 27 miles to a payphone in downtown Napa. At 7:40 p.m., he called the police. I want to report a murder. No, a double murder, he told the dispatcher in that same calm voice. I'm the one who did it. When I came to, choking on my own blood, Cecilia was somehow still alive. We clawed at the ropes, desperate. Finally, a fisherman and his son, out on their boat, heard our faint screams and came to investigate, finding a scene of pure horror. It took what felt like an eternity for help to arrive. In the ambulance, Cecilia, with unimaginable strength and courage, gave the deputies a detailed description of our attacker. She fought until the very end. 2 days later, in the hospital, she died from her injuries. I survived. I carry the 6 scars on my back, a physical map of his hatred. But the deeper wounds, the ones that don't heal, are the memory of Cecilia's last moments and the shadow of the man who took them. The Zodiac killer was never caught. On what should have been a perfect September day, a monster walked out of the woods, cloaked in a grotesque fantasy of his own making. He murdered and terrorized, and then melted back into society. And for all we know, he's still out there.